Hey.
Listen, I did something. I clicked on something, and now I think you have it too.
I think you have it too.
And I think you might want to get yourself checked from your IT professional.
It is things like business shame.
It's horrible.
Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories. Welcome back to So Here's My Story. I'm Jody.
I'm Elliot.
And last week, I had the pleasure of meeting another one of our listeners who I'd never met before.
Really?
Yes, Benjamin, who we've mentioned before. He used to live in Rwanda.
Right.
Yeah, so now he's back in D.C. for a short period of time before they go to somewhere that ends in an Istan. I can't remember.
Oh, an Istan.
Kazakhstan, like a Stan, something. I can't remember. I wrote it down, but now I can't remember where it was. Anyway, fantastic meeting. And what I came to find out was there were a number of people that he has personally suggested the podcast to, because he was texting with a couple of them. And he's like, I'm meeting with Jody, and we sent selfies to them. And
That's
it was
so cool.
Really fun. So if you are one of Benjamin's friends, hello to you too. We're so happy to get to meet people. But it did remind me that the best way this show grows is when you lovely folks who are listening say, hey, person I know, you should listen to this and why. Yeah. But I have one request. I asked Benjamin, why? Like when you say, hey, person, friend, my dear, you should listen to this podcast. I asked him to say like why he, like,
right,
because ...
What?
Not to stroke my ego, but because it's really important for us to know. And his answers were really interesting to me. So if you are someone who shares this podcast, I would so appreciate it if you text, email, voicemail, any way that information to us via Facebook, Facebook Messenger. You can also in the Facebook group if you're in there, obviously. And lastly, you can just email us at talktous@sohere'smystory.com. And that would be very helpful to us. Thanks.
Okay.
Oh, today's story, Elliot has a hysterical story about how it can actually be helpful to be hacked. And we get into some really, really important pieces, I think, about really what makes for a good call to action and how to get people to listen to what you have to say.
You ready to go?
Yep.
So here's my story. I was hacked the other day, and
oh no! So that really was a hack?
That really was a hack.
I sort of know the punchline, but go ahead.
Yeah. So what happened? Actually, I got an email ostensibly from a business valuation expert with whom I've been working, and it said, of course, hey, here's an attachment. Take a look. And I was waiting for a report from him, but I absolutely should have known that it wouldn't come in without any kind of warning. And anyway, so of course, despite all the training and despite all the conversations and the successfully avoided traps in the past, I clicked on it. And
well, right, because it wasn't from like Svetlana.
No, it wasn't like, they weren't offering a Russian bride or low mortgages or diet aids or whatever.
Right. It was from your person.
Yeah. So I clicked on it and I got hacked. And what that meant was that
then I got one of those from you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it goes into whatever the malware is, goes into my contact list, and it sends out these emails that look like they're from me. And they say
all the way down to actually having your signature, which that's why I was like, I don't think this is from Elliot.
Yeah. And they have an attachment to them, and it says, I don't know, something I wanted to share this with you or something important or whatever it is. And obviously, because as a lawyer, I send attachments to a lot of people. And anyway, so it goes out to my list, and I didn't know this. I was on a conference call at the time, and we don't get a lot of phone calls. Most of our communication is email, but the phone was just ringing off the hook. And I'm on this conference call, and I had it muted, but I could see the lights going off. And so the other people in my office were dealing with this. They're fielding calls left and right. And it wasn't until Kim had sent me a text during the call that said I'd been hacked that I realized what was going on. Anyway, so there are two things that came out of that. The first thing is this. I've had this law firm for 17 years. And over the course, I've had events. I've had drinking things. I've had wine and chocolate gatherings. I've sent out blogs for years, email newsletters. And when I send out emails, I get maybe, I don't know, a 12% open rate, maybe 5% engagement. If I get a phone call, that's really great. 2 is unheard of. When I had wine and chocolate events, and I'm talking wine and chocolate,
right?
I would get,
You're just like heroin.
Yes, I would invite, a couple hundred people and I'd get maybe a 40% open rate and some engagement. But for this hack, my email list was galvanized.
Oh my God.
I got hundreds of emails back, back, saying, hey, I think you've been hacked, et cetera, et cetera. I got over 70 calls from people. I got business from it. Because
people were like, oh, I've been meaning to call you anyway.
That's
now I
exactly
have a reason.
Right. So people I hadn't talked to in years, they're like, hey, I think you might have been hacked. And
I feel like we should pause and be like, we are not recommend. We are not. So here's my story. Does not recommend this as a marketing technique.
We do not. But it was my most effective marketing campaign.
Oh my God, I love this
ever.
So much. That is hysterical.
And I really did get business because people were like, I haven't heard from you in a while. I think you've been hacked. That's a problem. And
while I have you on the phone,
I was wondering if you could help me with this. And I started really thinking about this because the combination of, instead of inviting people to something or, hey, I've written something you might want to take a look at. Mm-hmm. And not that I write this stuff, but it's not like, here are 12 ways you can be awesome before 6 a.m.
Right.
It's none of that stuff. But what galvanized people was the possibility that, first of all, they could help me. They could alert me to something. I think that these calls back to me weren't of the, geez, I can't believe you sent me this. You got to check your security. I'm really angry that you did this. I hate the fact that I'm on your contact list.
Right.
They were actually coming from a genuine, helpful place. Hey, Elliot, you might want to check this. You probably know about it, but I just wanted you to know that it was very helpful. And that, as much as I can tell, that was the thing that seemed to galvanize people and to get them to respond to me. And I find that fascinating.
This is so much fun. I'm so happy you're telling this story. I was one of those emails that sent back to you, and I'll come back to that in a second, just sort of so I don't forget for later. I think one of many very fun places to dig into on this is the sort of exploration of why, because it's not just that they read it, it's that they took an action. So, there's that whole concept of a call to action, like an effective call to action. And I think there's some really important, truly important things to dig into about like what makes a call to action actually create action.
And understand the call to action in the hack, as you know, was please click on this attachment.
Well, no. So, but that's okay. I want to get to that in a second, but I want to say this first.
Okay.
I was one of those people who emailed you back, and I have to say that I understand, and I'm happy for you that it was a legitimate reason you clicked. But as I said in my return email, I'm slightly disappointed that like it wasn't a story. I was like, Elliot, did you click on the porn? You have to stop clicking on the porn emails.
No.
So I'm a little bit tired about this. I had and one other funny thing, and then I want to get into the meat. I had a friend for whom this happened, and he's an accountant. So again, like as a lawyer and accountant, you a little bit feel like you're, he was worried that people would feel like his was a DocuSign thing that's another version of that hack where it's like, here's a DocuSign thing for you to sign,
Absolutely.
Which he sends out all the time.
I get them from my accountant.
Right.
Yeah.
So, he was worried that like his integrity was going to be questioned or worried. Like, did you get the version of hacked where people now have access to my financial stuff? He's just really worried. Yeah. So he had to send out this letter to say, by the way, this happened. Don't worry. This is not part of it, whatever. And I remember him saying it kind of felt like having to contact all your recent sexual partners and tell them you have an STD.
You know what? Okay.
He said it's just really funny. Oh my word.
So what
Elliot has written on his page, he just showed me cyber STD.
It's exactly like cyber STD because what you have to do, you have to go, hey, listen, I did something. I clicked on something, and now I think you have it.
Yeah, I think you have it too.
And I think you might want to get yourself checked from your IT professional.
It is like it's like business shame.
It's horrible, and you do it over when you.
I'm laughing so hard, my eyes are watering.
When you have to send out business shame messages so often that you make up a macro so you don't have to type the whole thing out. Oh my God. It's a bad situation.
Okay. It is really, really funny to have to do that. But so it's really lovely to know that a lot of people didn't I have to get a tissue for my eyes. They're watering. It's lovely that people didn't, immediately be like, Elliot, you're an idiot. Why did you click on this thing? Because they are getting so much more clever. When they come, the fact that it was from you, I almost clicked on it, and I know better, I know better than to click on those things, but I thought, well, I'll check first. So I emailed you back. But here's what's fascinating to me. We do work so hard to I'm going back to the call to action thought now.
Yeah.
Could you hear my voice shift to a more serious voice? I'm like, now I'm very serious about the very serious topic here.
Yes.
So we work so hard to create a call to action that will make people take action. So it's interesting. In that one, technically, there was a call to action, which was click on this thing. Mm-hmm. So that was there, but they actually skipped over it to a different call to action, which is fascinating to me from a psychological experiment standpoint of what actually creates action and what does not.
Yeah.
Because as you said, you could send a thing and say, here are these 12 reasons to, do things before you get out of bed or whatever. And hoping that people will call, or drink and think and hope that they'll come and then call.
Or I could say, what's your biggest difficulty in business, and hope that people engage.
Right. So what I think happens there, and what's really telling to me, because they actually took an action that wasn't even asked of. It wasn't called to them.
No,
call to action. They took an action that wasn't even requested. And so, but there was action. So if you're like a scientific experiment, you're like, oh, there was, you're always looking for a reaction to the stimuli. What was the stimuli that actually created action? Because you didn't even ask for it.
And it wasn't a statistically invalid sampling. It was a lot of people did the same exact thing in response to a call to action for something else.
Right. So a couple things in that. One thing I think that's important is thinking that that there's value to the action. So, and not just to them, because I think that's another, I notice sometimes that I'll get an email or see a post about something, and it is something that I want. It's something that I'm interested in. And I just can't, like, if it's for me, then it has to go into the pile of, like, oh yeah, I really do want to work on that, but can I get to that right now? And it might go aside. So there might be somebody who's like, as you saw, people who've been really meaning to call you about a thing, and they just haven't gotten around to do it. So there is something about helping you. Yeah. Like so I think one message there is, don't underestimate people's interest in helping you. I won't in this moment take us back to a theme that we always come back to, which is like, it's almost like compliments, Elliot. People wanted to help you.
I was hoping you wouldn't tread on that, but yeah.
They wanted to be helpful, so they reached back. But I think it's really interesting. There's purpose to the action. I mean, what other things are in there that are useful to think about how you create calls to action?
Well, but here's the thing. I don't post. You post a lot on Facebook. When the mood strikes and you have something to say. I don't post a lot on Facebook. Mm-hmm. I do respond. Mm-hmm. So when there are posts and I feel like I can give value or contribute to a conversation or something, and I'm in a number of groups where if people have expressed a need, or they're looking for something, or they're wondering about something, and I feel like I have something to say, I am very comfortable responding.
Right.
But I'm not as comfortable just kind of saying something, contributing, like, posting something.
Right. Well, here's an interesting thing. I'm glad you said that, because you reminded me of another thought I had while you were talking, is I think sometimes, we're always looking for data about what has value, and whether we're talking about marketing or anything in the world. And so you have to rely on, like, how many clicks did this get, or how many comments did this get, or how many people called me back, or whatever, because it's the only data you have to go on. And yet, I don't think we should underestimate the value of lurkers. Like, you have to understand that you have to remember that there are lots of people reading and understanding and considering that don't say anything. I mean, it's funny you brought up the Facebook posts years ago before we started this podcast, especially. Because I write, I didn't do I've never been able to write newsletters or Facebook posts with the intention of being, of creating content. I just can't. Mm-hmm. If I try and do it, if I sit down with the intention of writing, I'm just blank canvas. Yeah. But when I am sparked by a thing that makes me think of a thing that I want to say, I would write about it. And really, I did that for me, frankly. And then I would run into people in town who I didn't even remember I was Facebook friends with, who never comment, never hit the like button, never, no interaction whatsoever. And they would say, oh my gosh, I read everything you write. And I was like, what? Like, I had no idea you were even out there listening. And I was reminded of that when you were talking, because you work so hard to be in front of people, but the fact that that many people even read your email, like even took a second to click on it before they clicked on the thing, but just even clicked on the open it at all to look at it and then respond back, says to me that people are listening. They're paying attention for them to actually even see the thing in the first place. And that does have value. So as much as we want them to take action, it also says to me, what's that classic thing? Like you have to have like X amount of touches before somebody will take action. The 7, you have to see it. So having that, there is something that will make them take action, but they were paying attention.
They are, but I think part of that is also that the message, the hack message, was incredibly short.
I don't think I'd have to go look right now. I think the one I got, there was nothing. I think, or maybe it
might
just
have been
said,
a subject line or click on this, or I wanted to share this. But either way, whatever it was.
Yeah, I'm going to peek and see what it was while you talk. So,
in addition to the attachment itself, whatever it is that came from me, so to speak, the words that were in the email that seemed to come from me, it's incredibly short. It's not like a 5-paragraph blog post or anything like that. And so I think that really contributes to it. I got a return message from my son's 8th grade English teacher.
Oh, wow.
And then I've got from not only opposing counsel, but I got from people that I hadn't spoken to in years, literally, and clients that we had one transaction years ago. They're out of the business. I mean, it was an incredible cross section of the people I've been in contact with. And part of the bad part of this was that I only have one email address because it's my firm. I don't really separate. So when I send something out personally, like to my son's English teacher, it comes from the same email address that I use for clients. It's just, it's kind of simple for me that way. So all the contacts are in there. But the message that came out from me was simple. I had been in front of them, so they know who I am. There's a credibility thing, which works against me in this case because people are like, oh, he sent me something. So, maybe I can click on it. And then there's a situation where they feel they can be of genuine value to me. Not just if I send out a message that says, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you would participate in my survey. And yes, people answering that can be of service to me, but that doesn't press their buttons. Right.
So here's what the actual email itself had no text. So there was no other than your signature, which was your signature, because it probably activated through your Outlook. So you just, automatically, but it made it look more you-ish, Right. The subject line though said action required, complete Wagenheim law PDF. So, so I was like, oh, okay. Like it sounds very, so the fact that there was a subject line that actually
demanding,
said, it was very demanding, action required. I honestly, the only reason I thought it might be real was if you were like testing a new program and wanted me to, help beta test a thing or something. Otherwise I'm like, this is very formal. And then there was a thing to open the attachments. But so I think that like a subject line that is very clear, like action required, that says there's a thing. But as I was sitting here thinking, my next sort of filter for that, because recently I've been getting this emails that actually say something like action required from this person that I've actually never even met in person. You may have gotten them too, because I think they're in similar circles, that says, I'm going to be doing this thing. Do you want to get on my email list? Which I don't, because I don't really know him.
Right.
And
yes,
so you know who I mean?
Yes,
okay. I just wrote the name. You're like, yes, I know these emails. Yep. And I keep getting this like, hey, if you haven't, action required if you want to stay on the thing. So I have recently received a like action required subject line. And then step 2 is my eyes skit to the who it's from. And it said Elliot Wagenheim, who I opened. This other one says action required. I go to the thing it says from. I'm like, nope. And I just skip the email. But I think that's important. So there's like a subject line that says like something is important and I need you. And then you flip to that integrity thing. Like, have you built a trusting relationship with your readers, listeners, your staff even? I see, a couple of my clients struggle with communication. Comes up in everything in a company is how do we best communicate this? Is this something we say with our voices at a town hall meeting, and y'all all come together meeting? Is it something we can put in an email? Is it something that goes on the virtual bulletin board? And how you get people's attention partly comes from how you're initially saying this is going to be a thing to get their eyeballs even to go in that direction in the first place. And then I think it comes back to like the trust and integrity piece of like, is this a person for whom I want to listen to your thing?
But that's one of the things. Is this a person? See, I would be, and let me just say this very clearly. I'm not going to run this as an A/B test, but I'd be really curious if you would get the same response if it didn't come from me, but it came from my company. Because I think that people came back, the responses of, hey, Elliot, I think you've been hacked. I think the important thing in that message was, hey, Elliot. It wasn't like, hey, ABC Landscaping.
Hey, Wagenheim Law.
It wasn't that.
Right.
And so it was also the building of a personal relationship that unfortunately this hack capitalized on. Right.
Well, no, I mean, because it's interesting. I just like reviewed this email that a client wanted to send out. I was like, how do you think this sounds? And honestly, the concern I've been having is like, I think the message in the email itself is very well written, but because of some of the things going on recently in the company, I am wondering whether or not people will even take the time to read it. Like before you even get to how do I say this thing, it's, does the person come into that email or whatever it is with I don't even know how to say it, like open heart, open mind, interest in, like, have you proven that you're somebody from whom communication even matters or they have value? So that part of it, I think, is so overlooked in any kind of call to action. There's so much focus on how do I write the right subject line or how do I write the right text in the button, and that stuff does matter, but none of it matters if, like this person I've been getting emails from, there is no subject line that he could write that would make me go, oh my goodness, I'm going to do that thing.
Right.
Because we have no relationship whatsoever.
But here's the other thing that I'm hoping does not turn out to be a lesson, but you spend a lot of time building up that credibility so people would be galvanized. So people, you don't do it for that, but that's kind of the litmus test. And people really did respond. But after you spend so much time trying to build up this credibility, can it be shattered with that one email? Because
I don't think one.
I'm hoping not.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does highlight the importance of the consistency with which you build the relationship and the rapport and all of that stuff. And that's my real fear. I mean, in addition to, of course, being really afraid that I put somebody else through this if they did click on it and they clicked on it because of my reputation or because of my relationship, that's what got them into trouble, that they trusted me. And that's what really kills me about this. But in addition to that, I also worry that now there's people out there that see an email from me and they're like, yeah, nope. And there's, it's a concern.
Well, and interesting because I keep sort of mapping this over since we are quite literally not suggesting this is a tactic to use actually. So we're not worried. So we don't have to think about this circumstance. But if I take it back to my client that's been trying to get this message out, if you have built that trust and then you like send out a thing that is worthless or problematic or, or just doesn't have the follow through, I think first goofs always are okay for the most part, for most people. Now there are some people. Maybe. I think some people once, I think every time there's a second ding in the relationship or bucket, this every time there's another one, it gets progressively more. Like I'm reasonably good at second chances for most people, most times. I know some people who are like, one chance, you're 2 strikes, you're out. I'm more of a 3 strikes, you're out person. Like everybody gets kind of 2. But I will say the feeling of that second one, I'm like, okay, I'm going to let this, but after this, you're out. And so I think they get progressively more problematic because, if there's a pattern of that, if I was getting those from you all the time, I'd be like, oh my, I might actually block your email address.
Right. Which would make scheduling recording sessions more difficult.
I didn't actually mean your email address, but yeah. So, but I do want to, I do keep wanting to like generalize this beyond just simply this like email thing. I think anytime you are trying to get a message across to people, it's the things I take from this is one, be really clear about what that message is right up front. I mean, just as a side note, I have learned recently a really important communication tactic, which is not to have the punchline kind of at the end. I mean, I'm a natural storyteller. So a lot of times my emails, even though they're not telling a story, kind of flow in that way where I sort of want to do the setup and then get to the bottom where I'm like, so the question is, do we want to do X or Y? And that is not good, because if somebody doesn't get to that point, they're reading it and they're already like going off into other directions. It's not even my question. So I started right at the beginning being like, ultimately, I'm trying to decide between these two things, and here's what you need to know as a backstory. So you can't bury the lead. But so there has to be like this clear communication point up front. And then I think if you're not getting your point across or getting the action you want from your email list or your employees or your board or your family or whoever it is, I think there's a huge mistake in, before you start worrying about all the verbiage in your communication, is looking at the relationship and saying, do I even have the street cred? You know, do I have the credibility or the integrity or the relationship or the trust in order for them to even want to look at my thing and care about what I say?
And I'll tell you, the last element, I believe, is the concept of reciprocal value, meaning that the reason that my email list was galvanized is because they also perceived, and correctly so, that they could provide value to me. And there's a self-affirming part of that that I think is incredibly important. And so I will just add, as we're wrapping up the episode, that if you out there listening want to provide value to us, you can contribute in our Facebook group to the discussions that are happening there, because Jody and I genuinely love those discussions.
That is really true. So I love that you said that. I'm going to take a quick pause just to say how people can find the Facebook group or get more into conversation with us. So, wow, it sounds like we planned this, but we did not. So you can find the button easily if you're on Facebook. If you go to the So Here's My Story page, there's a button that says join the group. If you go to our website, which is sohere'smystory.com, there is a button right at the top that takes you to the Facebook group. And the other way that you can get there is if you text the word story to 345-345, it will ask you for your email address, but then the next prompt will put you on our email list, but the next prompt takes you directly to the Facebook group. So there we go.
So do that.
Do that. Yeah.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories. You can find links to that group, as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email, and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
We'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best of ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us. Which is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.